Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to feature my recent conversation with Lizzy Belair. Lizzy is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2023, and she is also the president of the Net Impact Club. Lizzy and I recently connected via Zoom to talk more about her background, what led her to Darden, her first-year experience, what she did during her summer internship, and her plans for the Net Impact Club in the coming year. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Lizzy Belair. Lizzy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett, and thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you here. How's everything going? How are you doing?
It's good, yeah. Weather's cooling down here in Charlottesville, and I've started to go with the run club on Tuesday mornings on their run. That was nice this morning, and I got myself a learning team room now.
All right. Are you a big runner? Is that something that you did pre-business school?
No, I do it socially. So the run club is perfect for me. It's like, 2 to 4 miles, and it's at a chit chat pace. So it's fun to get to know new people and get a little bit of exercise. There
was recently a run with President Jim Ryan. Did you participate in that?
I didn't, and I'm happy I didn't. I heard the pace was ambitious.
Well, I think by reputation, he's a pretty serious runner. This is like his thing. So, it was an early start. It was like 7:15 in the morning. So I thought that was also ambitious for right around the start of school. So yeah, well, thanks. Glad to hear everything's going well. And thanks for joining us here on the podcast. Before we get too far into the conversation, we're going to talk about net impact today and amongst other things, but want to learn a little bit more about you. So tell us about your background. What did you do before coming to Darden?
Yeah. So I'm from Northern Virginia, and I went to Vanderbilt for undergrad. And there I was taking mostly econ and psychology classes and developed an interest in public health, and went into healthcare consulting. So I joined Sharon Consulting Group out of Vanderbilt and was there for 6 years. And was in their revenue cycle practice. So I didn't actually end up touching public health at all. What I was working on was helping hospital systems get more money from insurance companies. So it's kind of like a game. And I liked the work I was doing. There was a software implementation component to each of our projects. And I got to see a lot of the country that way. The engagements would be about a year long. So Monday through Thursday, I would be in the same place for a year, and decided to make a career pivot into real estate and more specifically community development, interested in walkability, and decided to pursue an MBA.
So tell us a little bit more about your interest in community development and walkability. I live in DC, so very walkable place, as you likely know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it kind of just developed over the 6 years I was in healthcare consulting. I still was interested in public health, learning about, how to decrease the disease burden in the US through preventative measures, and became more interested in behavior change through design. So where do we actually see people be more active, and people walk more when they're in a city and when the environment is set up for them to be more active. So became interested in suburban retrofit in terms of community development, where real estate developers will buy up, a defunct shopping mall with a huge surface parking lot and put in something that's more walkable. And all of a sudden you've created an environment where people can be more active. So a lot of people in real estate development have an MBA, and I felt like it was a good time to take the 2 years away and pivot from healthcare consulting into real estate.
How did you get interested in Darden?
So, I'm from Northern Virginia, and so UVA was always, I always knew it. I had a lot of friends that went to UVA. My brother went to law school here, and so it seemed like a pretty natural fit, especially because I see myself living in DC for the rest of my life. And Darden obviously has a strong network everywhere, but especially in DC. So I remember, I think I got coffee with you in Arlington during the recruitment process. And that was great. And then, the interview process, I just really liked it down here, and was excited to be able to pursue an MBA here.
And so you come to Darden, you have this background in healthcare, you've gotten interested in real estate. What was the adjustment process like as a new first year student?
Yeah, I think, it was like many other like life adjustments where you're leaving your friends and your community in one place. So I had been living in Seattle for 3 years prior to coming to Darden, and you're kind of leaving like your old life and starting a new life. So with that, there's growing pains, and it's tough, I think, for everyone. But within like 2 to 3 months, you've made some new friends and felt like, you have some activities that you enjoy and you have a community again. And I think at that point I felt settled.
Did you have much background with the material you were learning about in school?
Definitely there were some classes that were a struggle. I mean, finance class, I definitely was not comfortable speaking in. Accounting, same thing. But you can get by even with like one little comment during classes. It'll get you through.
Was your learning team helpful? Were there other people? I know there's second year tutors.
Yes.
We've talked with them on the podcast. There's lots of resources for students.
Oh my gosh, there's so much support, which is great. So yeah, my learning team was great in terms of prep. Friends, would like send you things. I mean, there are funny stories from our section where like somebody is mouthing, like somebody got a cold call and they're like, red in the face. They need to say something, and somebody from across the room is like trying to mouth something to them. So yeah, it's a very like supportive, collaborative environment. And it's good to push yourself. Like, I'm not somebody who loves public speaking or feeling, trying to speak up in an area where I feel like I don't have the expertise, but everyone's learning, and you realize that, a lot of people are doing the same thing you are, just in the same spot.
It strikes me that one of the growth areas for a lot of Darden students is having to speak about things that you're not 100% sure about. Mm-hmm. I hear that a lot from folks.
Yeah. And I think kind of what's helpful to me was also like getting through the first quarter of exams. And during the first quarter, you can be like, oh, wow, like, I really don't know as much as everyone else. And then you can take exams and you can, come right in the middle of the pack and be like, actually, I should just go for it. Everyone is in the same position.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to acknowledge. I think there's a tendency, as I've talked with folks here and just business school students generally, there's a tendency maybe to compare yourself to the person in the class who seems to know a lot about the particular subject and feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know as much as that person. But it's worth acknowledging, like, you have people in these classes that maybe this is exactly what they did before coming to business school. And so they have a depth of knowledge that many other people do not have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And they're so willing to share it either through the tutoring program or learning teams, or even just like teamsing during class or mouthing things.
What section were you, by the way?
I was section D. Yeah. Last place in Darden Cup, but first place in my heart.
Not the first time someone from section B has noted the Darden Cup challenges for section B.
Yeah. But, Darden Cup is so much fun no matter what, even if you're losing.
And would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about what Darden Cup is? Yeah,
so Darden Cup is a year-long competition between the different sections, and there are so many different games, and each game comes with points, participation points, and then at the end of the year, the tally is kept all through the year. So far we've had a relay race, and then cricket is on Friday. So I'm excited to play in my second cricket game in my life.
I think there's been trivia. There's typically a talent show.
There's typically a talent show. That's where Section D really shined last year.
That's also been mentioned that the moment of redemption, the talent show for Section B. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Lizzy, it sounds like you find your footing after a few months. We do have students at Darden who have this interest in real estate. What did that recruitment process, or was that what you decided to spend your time focused on as you kind of went through the job search process as a first year student?
Yeah, I did. So there are a couple big companies that recruit at Darden for real estate. I didn't have any real estate experience, so I definitely leaned on Eric Smith, most notably, who helped me out. He's now the president of the real estate club, to try and get my foot in the door. And I ended up doing a lot of off-grounds recruiting. So, just using my network either on LinkedIn or finding alumni and getting in that way from Darden. And I interned this summer with Main Street Property Group out in Seattle, and they are a real estate developer that is doing really what I was interested in doing. They're focused on emerging urban areas, so the east side of Seattle, where it historically has been very suburban, like Office Park. That's where Microsoft is, and very auto-centric. And a lot of the towns out there, like Redmond, Bellevue, Kirkland, are starting to try and make their little urban centers denser. And Main Street puts up multifamily buildings right in the little urban cores of these suburban towns. So that was great to get my foot in the door there. And I was kind of their sustainability program manager this summer, which was really enjoyable. They are ambitious in terms of LEED certifications on their buildings, and also they pursue Fitwel certification, which is a certification for like healthy building design. So it's all about trying to get people more active and eating better by the design of your building. So that was right up my alley, and that's I took ownership of their Fitwel certification process for their buildings this summer.
That's really interesting to think about how building design could lead you to even eat healthier. How does that work?
Yeah. So exercise wise, things like, putting the elevator in front, or putting the stairs in front of the elevator bank. So people will take the stairs, you're both spending calories, not spending electricity. The food thing is interesting. You get points for like not having vending machines, or if you have vending machines, not having sugary drinks in vending machines. You get a point if you're located close to a farmer's market. If you have a crop share drop off. So like one thing that Main Street's doing is partnering with this farm called Equilibrium that I used to work for out in Seattle. And they have a weekly produce drop off for 20 weeks out of the year, and residents will be able to sign up, and then their produce box will be in the lobby.
That's pretty nice. So you mentioned off-grounds recruiting. Some of our listeners may be less familiar with what that is. Just to kind of give you a little bit of context for listeners who are still learning about the recruitment process here at Darden, there's what's called on-grounds recruiting. Much of that is actually virtual these days, but that's when employers come and they recruit directly at Darden. For students, off-grounds recruiting can be everything from a company posting a job and people apply for it, and you go to the company and interview, to networking with companies sort of maybe through the Darden network, your own network, and actually going and applying for jobs and interviewing with the company off grounds, away from Charlottesville. Is that how you would describe it, Lizzy? That's how I always think about it.
Yeah.
That's all right. Think about it. Was that a good summer? I mean, that sounds like a pretty cool experience to be able to think about redefining some of these suburban areas and working on these really interesting building projects.
Yeah, it was great. And it was great to be out in Seattle and also get to tour a lot of the buildings and tour a lot of the, they call them comps, go out on comp tours, like comparable buildings. So yeah, it was a really good first experience in real estate.
So a real estate question for someone who's obviously have a passion for sustainability and walkability and this kind of user focused design and trying to get people to live healthier and active lifestyles. Does this change how you think about cities that you visit, or when you living in Charlottesville, how you're thinking about Charlottesville?
Totally. Yeah. So Charlottesville, it's my first time as an adult. So I grew up in McLean, Virginia, very suburban, spent a lot of time in the car, didn't really think anything of it at the time. And then as an adult, all of my 20s, I was in cities in DC and Seattle, and really enjoyed the lifestyle that it came with in terms of walking and biking everywhere, not needing a car. Moved to Charlottesville. That was definitely an adjustment. It's just much smaller town, and there's an urban core that's super cute, historic, right near the downtown mall. There's they even turned it into a pedestrian mall. So that's great. Some of the growth though has been around Route 29. And so like getting to a place like, Trader Joe's, which I love, is difficult to do without a car. I did live here without a car for a semester. So last spring I didn't have a car and was able to bike everywhere. I think it's super bike friendly. Like, it doesn't have protected bike lanes and things like that, which is something I'd love for Net Impact to plug in on a little bit. There's a walking and biking advocacy group through the city that anyone can join that I started going to some meetings with last year. So would love for Net Impact to plug in there. But yeah, I would say like Charlottesville, if you look at a map, like you can get most places within 3 miles, like a 15-minute bike ride. It's really nice. Walking, less so, but I've loved having a bike here.
And for folks who are interested in public transportation, I will give a plug for the university bus system, as well as there's the Charlottesville area transportation, which you have a UVA ID card, you can ride for free, which is nice. And you can get a lot of places, including Trader Joe's, if you wanted to go on the public bus system in Charlottesville. So
True.
I say that as someone who used to use the bus. But when I think about Seattle and I think about Washington, D.C., for example, I mean, Seattle seems to have a little bit, I mean, D.C. has sprawl, but like if you're talking about the district, you could walk to pretty much anything there. Whereas Seattle, you have the light rail, you have some other things, but you got water interrupting some of this stuff. You got a lot of bridges. But I guess once you get to a neighborhood, it's pretty compact, pretty dense. Yeah,
most of the neighborhoods like around the downtown are like historic streetcar neighborhoods. So they have their main like avenue with everything commercial and then the neighborhood that sits around it. And so it creates a nice walkable neighborhood.
All right. So you spend the summer in Seattle. You come back to Charlottesville for your second year. How's your second year going thus far?
It's good. I moved. So I used to live near the downtown mall, and I moved to Ivy, which has been great. So coming back and forth, and I have a dog. So coming back and forth has been really easy. And yeah, I've really enjoyed working with like the Net Impact board. I'm also on the board for the Food and Ag Club. And our first event is tonight. So yeah, mid-September is a good time. Like I'm settled in my classes a little bit. Club stuff is ramping up. Weather's improving. Everything's good.
For folks who are wondering what Ivy is, it's one of the apartment buildings that are located near Darden. It's Ivy Gardens. It's right across the street. I want to say probably, this is maybe generous, 5-ish minute walk to grounds. Pretty convenient. Certainly closer than the downtown mall, which if you want to walk, that's going to probably take you a solid 45 minutes or so, less time if you're on a bike. So I didn't know there was a food and ag club. Is that a relatively recent development?
It is. Yeah. Last year was its first year. And this year, we're going to build on everything that people laid the foundation for last year.
It's got to be some interesting opportunities just given the, agricultural pursuits in the area. I mean, you've got all the wineries, which people talk about, but you also have a number of farms.
Yeah, totally. The way that the club is structured, we have a VP of restaurants, a VP of CPG, and a VP of ag. And in terms of agriculture, Claudia Heath is the president of the Food and Agricultural Club. She used to work at Belair Farm, which is a local organic farm, pretty large. I think they feed they have something like 600 CSA members in terms of weekly produce boxes. And we went there last year for a farm work day, which was great just to learn more about the farm practices. They also told us a little about the river restoration that's happening through city grants on their land, which was great to learn about. And we're hopefully going to keep up that relationship this year. So one thing that I'm working on planning is a farm dinner in November there. So we would source all the food from the farm, have somebody there from the farm to talk about their operations and enjoy a dinner.
Is this always an interest that you've had? Farming, it sounds like it connected to your work this summer around some of the scoring of the buildings.
Yes, yeah, a little bit. So I deferred, and the summer of 2020, I thought that I was going to be starting at Darden in August. I wanted to do something different. So I applied to work on a farm 25 minutes outside of Seattle. Seattle has they've protected some land like close in for farming. And there's like a 10-acre vegetable farm out there called Equilibrium that I worked for that summer. And it's like a market garden. So it's most things are done by hand. It's no-till. It's a small crew. And so I'd work 4 days on the farm and then work the farmer's market. I loved it. It was like one of my favorite summers ever. I just like felt like I could be outside all day and doing that and then cook at night. And it was really fun. So yeah, I've kept up that interest now more like in terms of urban agriculture. So I see that plugging into the real estate a little bit because like, you know, one of the buildings that was currently in design for Main Street, they're doing a urban farm of like 2,000 square feet. And there's 200 apartment units in this building. Everyone will have access to go out and pick the crops that are planted by this company, Seattle Urban Farm Co., that plants and maintains the vegetables.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So is it on the roof? Is it just on the grounds?
It's on the courtyard. So they wanted this to be part of their building from the very start. So they worked with the architects and the landscape architects to make sure that it was like at the forefront of this building. So they designed a courtyard that's going to get a lot of sun and have big planters. And then, you know, there'll be berry bushes and a fig tree. I think it'll be really nice. Hopefully I'll get to see it in a few years when it's done.
We had a conversation on the Exec MBA podcast a year or two ago with an executive MBA alum who had started a hydroponic growing business in the DC area, focused on bringing fresh vegetables in particular to food deserts or under-resourced areas. That sort of vertical farming, it has a lot of potential, particularly in places where it might be harder to get food because it doesn't use a lot of space. Or it's a way of maybe using space that is not great for anything else pretty efficiently.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting, the Fitwell certification. So you get points if you have a vegetable garden on the property. If you can't do that, you'll get points if you put in hydroponics in the building. I think some of it is just about exposure for people. Like, you know, this is what this plant looks like and you can pick from it.
So one more question about your farming experience before we talk about net impact. I'm wondering, did the farm grow everything? I imagine it was probably quite seasonal.
Yes, it was seasonal. So the growing season is pretty long in the Seattle area just because it's so temperate. And there were greenhouses to grow things that really like hotter weather, like tomatoes and basil and eggplant and stuff like that. But it grew everything. So for farms that do a weekly produce box, you know, you need to think about your customer, and people like variety over the summer. So it would grow like every vegetable under the sun. And then also sometimes the farm owner would buy fruits from other vegetables. So a little more east in Washington, it's a lot hotter, and like have, you know, melons and things like that would get included.
Not a bad way to spend a year, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was really nice. In 2021, I did the same thing where I quit a little bit early and helped out on the farm.
So you're president of Net Impact, and we've talked about Net Impact here on the podcast before. but I was remarking before we started this conversation, it's been a little while. So for our listeners who are less familiar with Net Impact, would you mind telling us a little bit about the organization?
Yeah. So Net Impact, it has a lot of different areas of focus. So the way that I like to think about it is we're both externally focused and internally focused on Darden operations. So externally, we have a few different programs. We have Board Fellows, which I think is our best known. And what we do there is we partner students with local nonprofits in the Charlottesville area. Wade Clements is the VP of that, and he's doing a great job this year in terms of beefing up some of the programming around it. So this fall, there's going to be 3 different workshops all about board governance. So people can learn about nonprofit board governance before serving a year-long term with a nonprofit in the area. We also have an impact investing arm, which really supports students who are looking to go into impact investing and getting experience over their first year with case competition. And then we offer some career support. So that looks like career panels and just creating like a network for people to talk about different options. We always, canvass the DCL postings for anything that is impact related and include that in our newsletter. It's kind of externally. Internally, we have a VP of strategic initiatives, and that person is really plugging in with practices here at Darden. So Darden is aligned with UVA in terms of trying to achieve 2030 sustainability goals. And some of those notably are like decreasing water by 30%, decreasing waste by 30% from 2010 baselines. And so Net Impact plugs in there to look at what can we do on grounds to be more sustainable.
So a lot of different things. What attracted you to being the president of Net Impact?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of my career aspirations, it aligned where I really want to be at the intersection of human and environmental health in terms of the built environment. It's an umbrella for, like, we don't have a sustainability club here at Darden. So Net Impact kind of encompasses that. And at Huron, I had started a green team where we were just looking at the practices of Huron and trying to be more sustainable. So I felt like I could continue with that, being a part of Net Impact. And so I took the opportunity last year to apply to be the strategic initiatives liaison, and be a part of the board, which I really enjoyed. And then had the opportunity to be president this year.
Are there anything coming up for Net Impact that you're really excited about, that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. So like the Board Fellows programming this fall, I think will be great. I'm definitely excited for that. And then, so in terms of our like internal focus, one is waste here at Darden, and the other that I'd love to like build out a bit more is transportation. So like the walking and biking that we've talked about a lot. In terms of waste, so we have our holiday market, which we had our first holiday market last year, where students donated or were going to sell gently used items. And then, we set everything up. We had like cookies, hot chocolate right before finals started, and people came and bought secondhand items. And it lined up really well with a lot of sections white elephant events. So that's what I really enjoyed. Like, instead of people going out to Target or whatever and buying something new that maybe somebody wouldn't use, they came and they bought secondhand, which was great to see. That was our very first time putting it on. This year, we're putting it on in tandem with our cold call. So should I explain cold call a little bit or do? Okay. So cold call is on Thursdays and different clubs put it on. I love it. It's like right after class ends, like 5:30, and it's free dinner. And it's just like fun to hang out with people. And it's like the kickoff to the weekend. So to try and get more people to come and shop secondhand before the holidays, we're going to put everything out during cold call. So I think we'll get a bigger audience for it this year.
I love that idea of making things that maybe people would just throw away or give away or something else. Like, who knows where that stuff ends up? I mean, particularly it feels like that we're probably at a more disposable moment in our culture.
Mhm.
So nice to be able to reuse some of this stuff in this kind of way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure my mom was the biggest seller last year. She has literally, people were like, are you starting a thrift store business? I was like, nope. This is literally from my mom's garage.
She said, Lizzy, this is great. I've got some items. Can you
Yeah,
take them? And you were up for it.
yeah, exactly.
Well, that is fantastic. What would you want prospective students to know about net impact? It feels like we talk with a lot of people who have interests in things that intersect with the work that net impact does.
Yeah, I think, I would want people to know that Net Impact is a really strong community. There's about 100 people that are in Net Impact. And so, at times it's not as visible as a club like Consulting Club or the Finance Club or things like that, but it's still there and it has a really strong presence on campus. And there's a lot of people here at Darden who really are passionate about making an impact and carving out a place for them in their career to do that. I saw it show up last year when I took the IDEA course, where we got to select a project to do design thinking on. And the topic could be absolutely anything. And a lot of people, two groups out of like maybe 5, selected behavior change around waste creation here at Darden, which I thought was interesting. So it's definitely an area of interest for a lot of students.
You mentioned trying to change some of the transportation habits of folks in the Darden community. What are your thoughts on that?
So some of it is just like plugging into the background of other events. So I think people here do a really good job of always sending out a carpool tracker. But that's one thing, like, make sure that every event there's carpooling. Another is just part of the culture, like making it more part of the culture to bike places. We're going to do with the Outdoors Club an event in October where we like bike around to different bakeries and buy pastries and coffee and stuff, and just getting people comfortable, because I think, it definitely takes a little bit to adjust to like biking with cars around.
Yeah, but there are a number of very good bakeries to stop at,
Oh
and that
my
is
gosh.
quite an incentive for
So
folks.
true. I'm so excited to try 3 different chocolate croissants and rate them.
Yeah, I will for another time. I'll ask you where you're going, and if 3 croissants is too much, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all.
No.
Well, what else are you looking forward to in your second year? I mean, second year is a very busy year, as we've noted here on the podcast. It's also a time you're taking electives. Maybe you're choosing where to put your energy a bit more as you get more
Yeah.
involved with clubs and organizations. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah. So, I'm definitely looking forward to my club involvement and strengthening like the reputation that Net Impact already has. And I think one thing that Alex Smith left me with last year was the idea to just have a few like cornerstone events that people associate with Net Impact and enjoy. And so it was also our first time putting on a conference last year with the Ethics Club. So that's really what I see as like the holiday market and our conference, which will be in March, where we bring in, we'll probably bring in at least like 8 different speakers, and it's a full day of programming on Friday. So it's a great opportunity to explore different areas, different industries that you can make an impact in, and how people are doing that currently in their careers, and meet everyone afterwards with a fun happy hour and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, I'm just looking forward to, I'm happy I'm not a first year anymore. Like, you feel comfortable your second year in terms of where you're at and being a part of the community. So also just enjoying Charlottesville and spending time with friends.
Are there any classes you're taking that you're really excited about?
So I'm taking economics of water, which I love. I love like any of the econ classes here. So I definitely go after those. And I'm thinking about taking venture velocity in the spring, which is a 3-credit course. And you pretty much just work on your venture in 2 weeks sprints, and it just makes you more accountable. If you want to start anything, having the support of like 12 other students to be like, okay, I need to talk about what I did in the past 2 weeks. I'm also taking 2 courses over at the School of Architecture, which is a great opportunity. You can take up to 6 credits at any other graduate school. And, I think that there are just so many interesting courses offered at UVA. So I'm looking forward to that.
So you're continuing to pursue your career interest in real estate, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the School of Architecture has a real estate and design certificate. So 2 of these courses are within that graduate certificate.
That's very cool. So, well, one last question for you, Lizzy. What advice would you share with our prospective student listeners out there?
Yeah, so I think I'll say 2 things there. The first is if you're in a moment where you're still deciding whether to pursue an MBA or not, I would say look at people who are like 10 years older than you in a role that you want to be in and see what kind of degrees they have to help you make that decision. And then if you're in the moment where you're trying to decide where you're going to go, you've already committed to doing an MBA. I think, Darden has a reputation for being academically strenuous at times, but that really these 2 years, like you have so much autonomy. And so you're paying for this experience and you can really make it what you want. And so I wouldn't let that like cause you pause if you want to take the 2 years to spend time with family or have more downtime. You totally can do that while being at Darden.
I appreciate that point. I mean, students find different paths for themselves, and over the 2 years, I think it's interesting your point about feeling more comfortable in your second year. I hear that a lot from second year students here on the podcast. You go through the core, you've gone through that summer internship, and I think people they feel a lot more confident in that second year. What's your thoughts on why that is?
I think some of it is like, just the unknown. Like, oh my gosh, in the first year, it's like, can I pull off whatever I'm trying to pull off? So like for me, it was like, can I pull off this career pivot? And if I can't, like, wow, that's really I'm gonna be kind of upset that I decided to do an MBA. And so it's like the worry of that. Then you get an internship and it's like, okay, I can actually do whatever it is. Or, most people land in the spot that they want to land in. And so second year, the unknown is like so much, it seems so much like less risky.
That's a great point, because you've gone out and you've perhaps done the thing that you came here to do, or at least you've tried it out, and maybe you're going through recruiting in the second year, but at least it's with the context of that entire full year behind you as a first year student. So, Well, Lizzy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's always nice to meet someone who enjoys biking and thinking about cities and walking. I'm a walker here in DC. I walk to work, walk home from work, and truly one of my favorite things about the District of Columbia is that I truly believe you can walk to anything here. That may not necessarily be shared. That opinion may not be shared by everyone, but it's at least my opinion. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm on board with that. Thanks for having me on, Brad. It was fun.
And that was my interview with Lizzy Belair, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2023. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.